Hello, and welcome to the second lesson of the language media scheme of work. This is looking to analyse patterns of language within a media text because, as I said in the first video, AO2 and AO3, your concepts, theory, and context, are your assessment objectives, but you are still expected to look at language patterns, and that needs to sort of form the basis of any analysis you do. So a noun phrase is a word or group of words containing a noun and functioning in a sentence as subject, object, or prepositional object. There are 5 sentences there. I'd like you to identify the noun phrases in each. There is more than one in each sentence. As always, about 5 minutes in the task, and I'll give you about 5 seconds on the video. Okay, here are the answers. I'll go through a couple of them with you now. So the idea here is that the word palace is a noun in and of itself, but the people's palace is your noun phrase because the word people's and palace kind of go together to create a unit of meaning. It is the subject or the object of that sentence. As you can see, and as you go further down, there are quite long ones. So the idea being here, so the cultural and social anthropology department. So the department is your noun effectively there, but the cultural and social anthropology department all works together as one unit of meaning within a sentence. And what you can see with the last one, so the word degrees and the word school are kind of your nouns, but the noun phrases, they can either be affected, the nouns can either be changed before or after the noun. So degrees, science and engineering degrees. The School of Science and Engineering. These can be occasionally quite difficult to find, but what you need to do is basically identify the noun within a sentence and then see whether there are any words kind of in and around it that are immediately changing its meaning, creating variations to it in some capacity, and kind of work from there. So when analysing a language in a media text, we need to remember, as I said, to look for patterns of language. So for this lesson, we're going to look at specifically a text from The Independent from 2016 about Tony Blair, and very specifically looking at patterns of noun phrases. So I'm going to start by asking you to read the article on Tony Blair that's attached on Show My Homework. Because it's from the Independent newspaper, once you've read it, I want you to consider firstly, what are our expectations when it comes to their news coverage? And then what do you feel about the general representation of Tony Blair in this article? So basically, how do you think he has been presented to us, considering especially the political leanings or lack thereof of the Independent? Okay, so on Show My Homework, alongside the article, you've been given a list of noun phrases, or a collection of noun phrases, all from the article with regards to Mr. Blair. So obviously noun phrases will be used to basically describe him and things in and around him and in about him based on politics. So it's looking both individually and at patterns. What can you begin to analyse about noun phrase usage and how it creates meaning for the reader or shares ideologies of the writer in his newspaper? So I've taken the first 5 just to give you a sense of what you might start looking at. So the first one, Tony Blair. So the conventions of an article of any sort would generally be, for anyone who's being talked about, whether it's politics, sport, entertainment, is you generally start with both names, so, the first name and the surname. So that's a convention, so we can put that there. Then we have his party and country as then mentioned. So the idea being that, it's one of those interesting ones because party and country there are both nouns, therefore it becomes a noun phrase because they're kind of linked together. His party and country, though, I said, the use of his perhaps linking to ownership, his party being the Labour Party, even though he at this point was no longer in the lead of it. And again, similarly, country, his country belonging to him, even again, though he wasn't the Prime Minister at this point, so again, sort of that it links to ownership perhaps. Then we have the next two, go the former Prime Minister and former Prime Minister. So you establish his historical importance here, perhaps the fact that he was Prime Minister, therefore in a political news story, his what he says and what he does is of importance. And then the master with a question mark, and the question mark always comes in a sentence. I've included that as well. It just says here, a potential nickname that positions him as particularly skilled. It kind of is up to you whether the fact that it puts a question mark at the end of it, whether you can sort of say whether they're saying it as an actual legitimate thing or whether they're querying this or whether they're questioning that kind of nickname perhaps. That's all you're really looking to do, is you're looking to sort of see where are there, either individually or in multiple ones or with patterns, anything that we can learn about the way they are presenting Tony Blair, the way they are presenting their own ideas about Tony Blair, and anything like that. If you're still struggling a little bit, the support at the bottom just gives you a few to have a look at as groups. So it says here 2, 12, 13, 15 and 17 have similar purposes. So I've already put 2, his party and country, the use of his linking to ownership, so possibly linking to the idea of like the skills that he has, the fact that they were his party and they were his country, he was good enough to be that person. 9 to 11 perhaps highlights features of the genre of writing. So have a look at what's from 9 to 11. What does it show us? Perhaps why is it the way it is utilised? And 24, whilst not being a pattern, stands out. Why is it used? You may need to go back into the article and have a little bit of a look at the way it is positioned within a sentence and begin to think, oh, okay, why would they incorporate that, especially considering the newspaper that they are? And the last thing I'm going to ask you to do with this one, because I said between the reading and the analysing the noun phrases, it's a fair chunk of time that'll take. I'm just going to ask you to do a little bit of writing. Now, not all the writing that you do has to come to me necessarily. Obviously, if you're showing me evidence of your working, that's fine. But this is just good practice for you to get used to doing a bit of writing for any of the analysis you do. So it just says here, when exploring language, you are often looking for patterns first before analysing them further. So I often use the metaphor of a funnel. If you see at the top there, noun phrases, so that's your pattern. That's the big thing you've identified. That is your pattern that you'll lead with in a paragraph. Here are noun phrases are used to show ideas about Tony Blair. And then you funnel down to specific examples. So you've identified your pattern, you go to specific examples, that's when you start to do your concepts, your theory, and your context. Now, concept, remember at this point, is primarily representation. That is a concept. What is the representation of the person writing, the website, the newspaper, Tony Blair himself, politics, Labour Party, whatever you see is being represented at this point. I've put the three at the bottom. They didn't have to be the three you chose, but yeah, it's just showing you need to go from like the actual overarching pattern. But once you've identified it, you do need to boil it down to a couple of examples and just look at them in a bit more detail. So I've put a question here. How does the use of language in the news article represent ideas about Tony Blair, both in terms of production and reception? Now, you can either do production or reception. It's up to you. You don't have to do both necessarily. It's just worth bearing in mind that production is as important, of course, as reception. But just generally, how are the noun phrases being used? How are they creating meaning for us? What are they showing us about how the person who wrote this or the website that published this view Tony Blair and possibly even, it could be about viewing Tony Blair, but it may even go back to just kind of like how are they utilising noun phrases to adhere to maybe the conventions of a political piece in a website. Are there certain things they're doing just because it's convention? Are there certain things they're doing just because it's polite? It's completely up to you. So I just said here, write two paragraphs. Noun phrases is your language pattern, but explore two different ways they are used. That's it for the lesson, actually. So from there, as always, be safe, keep well. Any questions, do email me, let me know. I'll be posting more videos for lesson 3 and lesson 4 at some point, either the end of next week or start of the following week. Okay, cheers, bye.